First up is the constitutional crisis caused by the outrageous abuse of power by the House Democrats, who have decided to abuse the power of impeachment to try to overthrow President Trump. And there was a vote this week on, I'm not quite sure what you would call it. It certainly wasn't an impeachment inquiry in the traditional sense of the word. It was a ratification of what Adam Schiff has been doing. And there are some pretend changes to the rules that supposedly will allow Republicans to participate a bit more directly in the proceedings, but nothing is changing, practically speaking. So whenever you hear someone call it an impeachment resolution or an impeachment inquiry, it really was a coup resolution, because the rule of law was not upheld, due process was not given in any substantial way to the President of the United States, and the secrecy and the corruption will continue. You have to remember, this whole coup conspiracy came out of this corrupt relationship between Adam Schiff, his office, and the leaker/whistleblower, whose name is now out there, although we're not sure who he is exactly, so I won't give you his name. You can look it up online, and you can see if it's true. He was nothing but an anti-Trumper who had worked at the White House, associated with Democrats, had been pushed out of the White House allegedly for prior leaks smearing President Trump. So if this same, it doesn't really matter if this is the guy or not, but we do know there was an illicit communication between the so-called whistleblower and Schiff's team. Schiff was directly briefed on it, but he lied about his connections to this person, lied about his communications to this person. But nevertheless, they went full throttle with a coup attack on President Trump. And they've been conducting hearings in secret. It's been reported this week, for instance, that certain questioning, specifically about the leaker, who he was, who he would have been talking to, trying to get information about that, was ruled out of order by Mr. Schiff, and that's putting a too fine a point on it. He actually pushed said the witness didn't have to answer some of the questions. So when you go and look at this resolution, there's going to be a lot of reporting on it, obviously, but you'll see nothing's changed. The Schiff secret process will continue. The president won't be able to present evidence, call witnesses. The Republicans won't be able to present evidence, call witnesses, although in theory they'll be able to, but only under the sufferance of Adam Schiff and his colleagues in the Democratic caucus. So this is the Schiff Empowerment Act as much as it is a impeachment inquiry, because there's never been a precedent for having the head of the Intelligence Committee conduct this impeachment effort. It didn't happen under Clinton, it didn't happen under Nixon. In fact, the Select Committee on Intelligence, think about that, Select Committee on Intelligence, it's not a standing committee of the House. So there's all sorts of irregularities associated with this unprecedented harassment of President Trump. And again, there is no good faith basis to even investigate what went on with President Trump and Ukraine. The transcript's been out there. To the degree we've been hearing witnesses, it's all witnesses whining, literally whining, about policy differences they had with the President of the United States. For instance, this Colonel, is it Vindman? He testified that he was concerned that there was activity going on that was undermining the interagency consensus on Ukraine, as if the, quote, deep state consensus on Ukraine overrides the prerogatives of the President of the United States. You see the ambassador complaining about Rudy Giuliani raising questions of corruption as it relates to Ukraine. Evidently, the deep state bureaucracy didn't want corruption being raised as an excuse to prevent Ukraine from getting access to weapons from the United States. Well, the president has every right to raise those issues. The president's transcript is straightforward. There's testimony by another official who said he didn't see anything wrong with it. There's no basis for impeachment. This is just the latest version of impeachment from the House Democrats. They were committed to doing this from the beginning. I remember I testified I think in 2017, so it was right after the Democrats got into office. Elijah Cummings, who passed away, God rest his soul, was conducting a hearing on FOIA and I think transparency. So I was up there testifying, and I'm sitting there listening to the Democrats and one of the panelists for the hearing talking about throwing President Trump out of office, calling him a traitor. I don't remember if impeachment came up specifically, but certainly it was the subtext of everything the Democrats were asking about. This was 2 months after the president took office. So they thought the Mueller report would result in impeachment, but obviously that didn't work out because Mueller confirmed, as every other investigation has confirmed, and as everyone knew for 2 years, yet continued to harass the president, that no Americans knowingly involved themselves with the Russians to interfere in our election campaign. But we do know, using that specious reason, the Obama administration and deep state spied on the Trump campaign and President Trump. So when the president's talking to the president of Ukraine, that's the issue he's worried about. Why did this corruption take place, and what was Ukraine's involvement in it, and are they investigating what went on? And he had every right to ask about Biden, to see that the full truth was being found there. Because there was a lot of corruption associated with Biden's interaction with Ukraine and his son Hunter. And despite what you heard, those are still serious allegations. We're investigating them. Biden's admitted that he withheld $1 billion in aid, or wanted to, or threatened to, in exchange for getting this prosecutor fired, who coincidentally was investigating his son's company in Ukraine. This is why the coup's taking place. You had the Justice Department, for instance, just 2 weeks ago, or the week before last, confirm that there's evidence of criminal activity in the targeting of President Trump. And look, when you're talking about who might be responsible for that criminal activity, it's not a typist in the FBI. It's not a records clerk in the Justice Department. It is the senior leadership who took it upon themselves to spy on and target the President of the United States with the direct authorization and participation of Barack Obama, then President. So when there are issues about, the Justice Department's conclusion that there's enough evidence to launch a criminal inquiry, so there's evidence of criminal activity, who will they be focusing on? Necessarily Biden, Obama, Rice, Clapper, Brennan, Strzok, Page, Lynch, Susan Rice, Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee. Yes, the Democratic National Committee. Christopher Steele, Fusion GPS. Stephen Halper, the spy who was working for the Obama gang to target Trump. And of course, you know who they were all coordinating with? People like Adam Schiff. He's conflicted in more ways than I can count from investigating anything related to President Trump, given his demonstrated record of leaks, lies, and unethical conduct as it relates to the targeting of Trump. This is what the coup's about. We've got criminal activity confirmed by the Justice Department, or at least enough evidence of criminal activity to warrant a criminal investigation. And what is the deep state corrupt group doing in the House? Targeting Trump. And as I said last week, you get the State Department bureaucracy basically running over themselves to go in and complain about Trump for being president. That's right, for being president. They're trying to impeach the president for exercising a core constitutional duty he has an obligation to exercise, A, in conducting foreign policy, and B, and in making sure the laws are being faithfully executed and enforced. This is a coup. And you know, the Republicans are right to complain about the process because there's no due process here. The Democrats and their echo chamber in the media would have you believe that, oh, impeachment is a constitutional process, so everything falls in the face of impeachment. Well, that's not true. The rest of the Constitution does not collapse when the House conducts an impeachment inquiry. Due process needs to be followed. The civil rights of the president need to be protected. The executive branch's prerogatives under the Constitution also need to be protected. Classified information needs to be protected. Grand jury material needs to be protected. The civil rights of people being dragged in and hauled in before this Star Chamber proceeding, they need to be protected. And more broadly, our Republican form of government needs to be protected. The Constitution does not take a holiday during impeachment. And now that there's been a ratification of this, it doesn't make it any more legal. It doesn't make it any more constitutional. It doesn't make it any less abusive. You can put lipstick on a pig, and it's still a coup. So what next? Well, nothing's changing in the sense that Schiff will continue his Star Chamber proceedings. Nothing's changing there. And I'm glad to see the Senate is beginning, and I think thanks to Judicial Watch. I really do think that Judicial Watch deserves a lot of credit here because we were the first ones, if you may recall, to highlight the fact there is no constitutional requirement for the Senate to conduct an impeachment trial. And certainly in this circumstance, I can't think of a better reason not to conduct an impeachment trial. We've got the President of the United States being viciously harassed through, as I say, this coup effort. Why would the Senate endorse that harassment by committing to a trial? This is what I said, and I want to read what I said specifically. The Senate should rule out a trial on any the Senate should rule out a trial on any so-called impeachment arising from the Pelosi-Schiff coup attack on President Trump. Again, the Senate should rule out a trial because the way things are going, they really can't fairly have a trial. It would welcome to put the president on trial in response to this garbage impeachment would do so much to damage the Constitution and our republic. They should just say no. And I tell you, by saying no now, it may nip this thing in the bud. Because despite what you hear, it was a close vote, obviously. It was a very partisan vote in the sense that only 2 Democrats didn't sign on to the coup. My guess is Nancy Pelosi thinks she has the votes for a coup later, or impeachment. But if the Senate says there's going to be no trial, there may be some Democrats who think, what have we done? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? We're just going to do this crazy impeachment. There's going to be no trial. Well, that obviously looks like a stunt. Of course, it is a stunt, but a terribly abusive one that tears at the fabric of our constitutional system. So I would encourage you to not only call your members of Congress, and I can't emphasize this enough. Many of you, and I've previously highlighted your right to petition your government. You know, we often ask, what can we do? What can we do? Well, you know, the Constitution tells you what you can do in some ways. You've got a right to petition your government. It's a core constitutional right under the First Amendment. Are you exercising it? And you may say, well, my member of Congress doesn't agree with me on any of these issues. No, don't worry about that. Just call and respectfully tell them what you think about what's happening. Call your members in the House, call your senators, and raise the issues that you think need to be raised. And believe me, even if they don't agree with you, your calling them may temper their approach, may change minds. Believe me, Democrats and Republicans, and this goes for those of you who are liberals, you think, well, I'm not going to call a Republican. Look, they hear from voters, they hear from constituents, and they may say publicly, I'm in favor of this, but behind the scenes they may be going to their leadership, you know what? You know how I'm going to vote if you make me vote on this. But I don't want to vote on it because I've got my constituents going crazy about it. It really impacts the behind-the-scenes deliberations, even for those politicians you think don't want to hear from you. So call your senators, call your House members. The number to call is 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. Write letters, send them emails, write letters to the editor, share the information you're learning from me and Judicial Watch generally with other members of your family, with your friends, with your colleagues. You know, your markets, your social circles, your business circles, your church community. I mean, this is all hands on deck, folks. I was complaining the other day. I don't understand. I talked about this first on the update last week. I don't understand why the White House and the Justice Department have essentially dropped virtually all their legal defenses around the presidency. All these witnesses are testifying in ways that I think violate presidential privileges and the protections on classified information. I don't understand why there's no objection, at least going to court to object. The Senate needs to take action. The House, obviously the House Republicans, you know, they can only do so much other than try to educate Americans about what's going on. But you, dear citizen, need to take action as well. And you could support Judicial Watch, dare I say it, but also be personally active in communicating with your elected officials and those around you. So this coup isn't going away. And if they get away with it, in the sense of having an impeachment voted on out of the House, all bets are off for the future of the Republic, in my view. You know, because that crossing the Rubicon in terms of abusive impeachment of targeting the President of the United States will have been committed, and there'll be no going back. And the stability of our country will be forever shaken, because every president here on in can be subject to impeachment and potential removal, depending on how the numbers are, based on nothing but partisan and corrupt animus targeting the president, not because the president did anything wrong. They've never accepted President Trump as president, and from the moment he was put in office, actually before then, he's been undermined both illegally and otherwise. Look, his political opponents play politics. I understand that. His political supporters play politics. I understand that. But we've got to protect the rule of law. And Judicial Watch is the referee, and we're blowing the whistle about this unprecedented attack on the presidency. So, you know, this endorsement of the abusive process that rolls over the rights of the president undermines the rule of law. It's a coup attack that was corruptly formed and is being corruptly pursued. And the citizens have got to try to put a stop to it. And as I was beginning to say, the Senate is, I think, standing up. You see Mitch McConnell saying this process is still unfair. And Mitch McConnell is a cautious politician, and we've been critical of him for being cautious. But if you watch him for a long time, you know he seems to be setting up the Senate to stop this coup, as I say, in its cradle. So we got to keep on pushing for the truth, and what Judicial Watch is going to do is that we're going to keep on suing for the truth. suing for the accountability, getting the documents out about the real corruption, the biggest corruption scandal in American history, which is the illegal targeting of President Trump, candidate Trump, by the Obama administration and the deep state.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.